you for coming in person, and thank you for coming virtually, right, or digitally, whichever one I'm saying. So yeah, I'm here to do this talk on very long title. Have you ever wanted to know what it's like working in cybersecurity? Is it mysterious, dark art that people will want to make it out that it is, so it's really cool, or is it just some simple little button pressing? To be honest, it's all a lot of button pressing, and that's my talk. Thank you for coming, and I hope you have a safe trip home. No, we do a lot of button pressing in cybersecurity, and there's a lot of tools and things that we use, but they complement what we have and how we work. But I think a lot of the things that we have in cybersecurity, we've got lots of tools, but in what I'm going to talk about today, it's really the people that make the biggest difference in what we have. So I've got a little plan of what I'm going to do, hopefully. So we'll see. So I started with this plan, and then I thought it's probably not the best plan to go with because it's a bit too truthful. So I come up with a real plan. My plan is really, I'm going to tell you about how stressful and exciting cybersecurity is. So if you work in cybersecurity, you're thinking about working in cybersecurity, or you're kind of involved, because you work in an industry adjacent to it, I'll tell you about how stressful and exciting, particularly cybersecurity incidents can be. They're always one of the most interesting bits. What's new in 2022? What's going on in what we're seeing at Samurai Digital Security? What seems to work, not just generally, but particularly in cybersecurity. What kind of tools, what kind of approaches, what are people doing that's successful, hopefully. What never disappears, so what never goes away? What lessons do we never learn, or what kind of things always come back to haunt us? What always goes wrong? What are the common things that no matter when we're dealing with clients and customers, what always seems to happen that's always going wrong? What's interesting? I spoke to my team about what they enjoy in the job, also what they dislike in the job as well, and they were very honest. And then hopefully some questions at the end after I've thrown all that at you. So this one, to try and justify why I'm here, why I'm stood here, why I'm on Zoom, hello, is who am I? So as Shaz said nicely, I worked in university for a number of years. The key points are, we're a cybersecurity company now. We hire lots of ex-students and professionals. The team's roughly about 18 full-time equivalents now, so it's getting quite big. It becomes actually difficult to manage. Stop doing cybersecurity and more management. And I've been in varying ways involved in the community, particularly in cybersecurity in Sheffield. So I'm one of the co-founders of SteelCon, which we are running this year in Sheffield, Hallam. I've also, for a while, I ran the OWASP chapter in Sheffield, but that was very challenging. So only lasted 2 years on that. And my big geeketry badge would be my CSTL web badge, which basically means can do lots of hacker things on websites and stuff. And yeah, I used to play around with malware when I was 15 with, if anyone's old enough, sub-7 net devil, the ones that would make people's if a CD-ROM trays open like a drink holder, but maybe people don't even know what they are. So yeah, that is me. So I tried to write a talk, and the good thing and bad thing about cybersecurity and technology is it's always changing, right? So I agreed to do a talk. I wrote a talk. The Ukraine crisis happened, which caused me to rewrite the talk in a different way based on the hacks and state-sponsored things. Then I rewrote the talk after that. Lapses happened, that, and then I rewrote the talk again. So the lesson here is leave the talk until the last minute. Do not prepare all your deadlines. Wait until the last minute, because you won't have to redo the talk 3 times. So this is the talk that I've ended up with now. So good question. What is it like to work in cybersecurity? And I asked the guys I work with what they like, what they don't like, what is it like to work there? I've got my view, but I thought I'd ask the people that actually do the good hard work what actually they think. So these are the best 3 answers I think the team came up with. The first one is, it feels like being the center of several disciplines. So obviously cybersecurity traverses different disciplines, because you might do cybersecurity in healthcare, you might do cybersecurity in fintech, you might do cybersecurity in a retail store. It can affect in a university, it can affect many different areas. It's influenced by geopolitical trends, would you believe, state-sponsored hacks and things like that, the way governments move and stuff, that affects things a lot actually. Economic factors as well, and even historical patterns. So basically, this individual thought it's quite an exciting area. The second one was problem solving. Lots of jobs involve problem solving, but cybersecurity involves a lot of problem solving. You're trying to make things do things they shouldn't. You're trying to test things in a certain way. You're dealing with people, processes. It's not just technical, it's information governance. You know, actually, it's easier to get something technologically to do what you want it to do than is a human. And so the whole policy procedure piece is really challenging as well. But, you know, whether it's a penetration test, incident response, risk management, there's just lots of problems to solve. So this person saw that as a positive, could also be seen as a negative if you want an easy life as well. The third one, loves breaking stuff, not getting arrested for it. I mean, I guess that's a good thing, right? So legally, you're allowed to hack into things. It's fun to understand applications and systems, see what they can do. So generally, you know, the feel I get from people I speak to is it's an exciting, dynamic subject. There's lots going on. It's forever changing. It's the kind of area you get into, and you're just never going to stand still because, you know, there's always new technology and there's always new applications. You know, there's always new things changing, whether it's driverless cars, IoT, the cloud, all those things are changing, and it's going to, who's going to get there first? And then what they don't like. So, you know, what are the things that people don't seem to enjoy within cybersecurity? So the first one was my favorite one, maintaining the discipline to stay on top of all the knowledge and trends, because you're overwhelmed. There's like news articles every day. There's so many different things. And imposter syndrome is a big thing because cybersecurity is not just one area. There's so many different things in cybersecurity. So you could be the best penetration tester, but you know nothing about GDPR. Or you could do risk management, you know, 27,001 like the back of your hand. But when it comes to phishing, you're out of your depth. And that's common, right? And that's okay because it's such a varied area that we've got different disciplines and different specialisms, and you can be more of a generalist and do different things. But whether you're going to the bleeding edge of one specific area or you're looking to cover lots of them, you're going to have to stay on top of it. It's always changing. You know, the attacks, they're always moving. The policies, the governments, the regulations. You know, 27,001 gets a new standard every 3 or 4 years. Cyber Essentials changes. You know, different systems are always coming up. So maintaining the knowledge can be quite troublesome, but you could take that as a positive. It's also it can be quite rewarding because you're actually learning a lot. Writing reports, doing reports, and writing reports. So Thomas, there, I'm going to pick on him. One of our best penetration testers is an amazing penetration tester, but he hates doing reports, right? Because it's not normally the fun thing. If anyone likes doing reports and you can penetration test or do any form of security, come and talk to me, because report writing is a skill that we struggle to find because it doesn't tend to go, people have it, but it doesn't go hand in hand with a lot of cybersecurity domains. But it's such an important thing. Now, does anyone know, probably for a company like mine, a consultancy company, why might report writing and reports be the most important thing in the world?
Come again with the question.
Is that sorry?
Come again with the question. I said, come again with the question.
You want the question again?
No, you asked it. Yeah. You asked the question, right?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, please, yeah.
I said, come again with the question.
Oh, yeah. So why might reports be one of the most important areas of cybersecurity? Why could it be such an important skill to have, or important thing that you're going to need to have?
Because that's how you communicate to a client.
Exactly. Yeah, it's what goes to the client, right? And don't get me wrong, you can have phone calls, team calls, face-to-face calls, but ultimately a lot of information, whether it is technical security, whether it is compliance policies, it's delivered in a report in some format. And that's challenging to sometimes pull that information together. So it's actually a big part of what we do, whether it's an incident response or phishing, and so, for those of you that are studying, actually doing the reports is a good thing, right? You probably don't want to hear that, but the better your reports are actually, the better the work is. That's not to say people enjoy it, because it's not probably the most exciting piece of working in cybersecurity. Other things, having to explain issues to C-level. So, the board, right? So you're really into your cybersecurity. You really love your topic with a passion, and you've done something amazing. And then you go to speak to a load of C-level board people, the people at the top, and they don't care. They just want the results. What was wrong? What was good? What was bad? You try and impress them with all this stuff you found. They said, what's the risk level? Medium. What does that mean? And it can be quite intimidating, but it's quite powerful because I see a lot more involvement from us with C-level and people in those positions because of the importance of the work that we're doing. So, you know, be prepared that you might have to go and talk to some quite senior people to deliver your results, especially if the results are not very popular when you're going in there and showing them everything's red and everything needs to be improved. The last one is being viewed as a blocker. So, you know, security as a, no, you can't do it. I'm not allowing you to do that. You can't install that software. You can't have that. You can't do that. So it's getting the balance right. But that can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. So, you know, things to like, things not to like, but they tend to be the biggest ones that I see. So what's next? Yeah, do you like stress? Who likes stress? Anybody like stress? No one likes stress. So again, I don't want to, you know, sadly, like lots of jobs are stressful, right? And there's jobs there that are, you know, very, very important jobs, particularly, you know, airline pilots and firefighters. These are some of the most stressful jobs, right? Cybersecurity doesn't make the list. But I think it's because it's not normally in cybersecurity, it's not persistent. Like if you're you know, an aircraft pilot in the military for sure, firefighter, you're dealing with external forces normally. You know, aircraft pilot, you're dealing with the weather. Firefighter, fire. You know, police officer, you know, people, military personnel, other nations, right? Cybersecurity tends to be quite stressful because it's reactive. And no matter what we do, it's really hard to not make it reactive. We can plan and prepare, but a lot of the time you're reacting to information that you're given and you're trying to make things better. You know, an attacker, you're working against an adversary, you know, the hackers out there, the bad people out there that are trying to make money, do ransomware, do bad things. You're actively working against somebody else. So in other jobs, maybe all jobs have their stresses, right? But as a lecturer, to pick on lecturers here, I'm not one, you know, I'd like to think the students aren't working against you. They are actively trying to subvert your actions. Now, you may argue that may be the case, right? But I think on the whole, the students are trying to help and they're trying to do a good thing. And that's challenging. But when you're working in other careers, it can be quite challenging if the people you're working, you know, against are actively trying to sabotage you, take down your you know, the business you're working with and do bad things like dropping ransomware and doing extortions. So it can be quite a stressful job. Now, I wouldn't say it's always stressful, but whenever there's things like, you know, the lapsus thing happened recently, WannaCry back in 2016, Log4j just around Christmas time, I believe, even the Russia-Ukraine crisis, every time there's something big like that, it has an effect when you work in cybersecurity. Because when these things happen, even people that are working on patching are running down to patch servers. You know, people are actively having to react to what's going on. So the honest answer is it can be quite stressful, but, you know, not to sell it, it can be very rewarding. And it's the kind of thing that's fast moving. As was mentioned earlier, you're constantly learning, it's dynamic. The stuff you were doing 5 years ago is different generally to the stuff you're doing now. There's always new tools, new techniques, new things to play with. So if you like fast moving, constantly learning environments, it's a good place to be. It can be very dynamic as well. You know, 1 minute you can be working on one thing, the next something totally different. You know, as a pen tester, you might, you know, doing a pen test on some Wi-Fi hotspots, and then you get dragged in to do some Kubernetes. And you're kind of going, what? I've gone from Wi-Fi to Kubernetes. I don't even know anything about Kubernetes. So you have to be learning. You don't have to know Kubernetes like a developer would, but you need to know enough to be able to get by. And that's what I'm saying. It follows technological advancements. And you sometimes get respect. Sometimes, you know, in every career you do and you don't. But, you know, it's viewed as a career that's, you know, quite interesting. And you know, although when you tell people you're working generally cybersecurity, their question is, can you hack into my friend's Facebook or get me something that I shouldn't, or goes very illegal? But I think generally there's a good view of it, as long as you're one of the good guys, right? You know, you're not driving around in Lamborghinis with 600 bitcoins. So it's 2022 now, would you believe? So, you know, how do the bad guys get in? What do they do? Now, we were talking about cybersecurity a decade ago, and cybersecurity existed even before that. So cybersecurity, kind of like, it's ever present. It doesn't look like it's going to go away. Certain things are going to stick with us for a long time. Now, again, it moves, but I say it doesn't change. So, roller to phishing here, RDP. What does RDP stand for? Pop quiz. Yes. and VPN. I'm going to give you that one, VPN. So these three are what we're seeing in 2022. Like some three very simple technology, phishing, but RDP and VPN, two ways to log into a network remotely, and phishing. Now, phishing existed 5 years ago. Phishing existed 10 years ago. When I had AOL, if anyone knows AOL, there was phishing. It was different. It was basic, but phishing still existed. And when we're dealing with incident responses, because one of the things we do at Samurai, one of the most stressful things we do is deal with incident responses when a client's been hacked, normally ransomware. We have to try and find out how they got in. And 99% of the time, from our experience, it's one of these three. Someone's been phished, or somebody has managed to get in externally through remote desktop or VPN. You know, all these complex state hacks that you see, they exist. But to be honest, most of the ransomware groups and the hacking groups, they're just doing, get away with the easiest, most basic thing you can do. Credential reuse. So an administrator has their LinkedIn password compromised. It's the same password they use to log into their Active Directory on Azure Cloud. Something like that. It can be so simple. And this is what we see. We see, they got in through a phishing email, they got in through a remote desktop that was brute forced, accessible through a VPN. Basically, a lot of these threat actors are remote. They need a landing pad. So the external perimeter of your network, and again, with the whole cloud computing and stuff, the perimeter is sometimes a little bit grey, so we've got to be careful there. But if you can sometimes imagine a perimeter, at least, they're getting in because they're attacking the perimeter. They're attacking the publicly available services that are there, and just hitting them until they get in. As I say, new tools, old methods, right? Historically, that's what people were doing. They were breaking in through the outside, and they're just using different techniques. So now we've got the Holy Grail, multi-factor authentication, right? Multi-factor authentication is going to solve all those problems. Kind of. Solves a lot of problems, makes it more difficult for the attackers to get in, right? But there's been a rise in SIM swapping attacks. Yeah, so you know what SIM swapping is? Where basically someone will kind of clone your phone number so that they can get your MFA. So what happens is we put a bit of a wall there, and then people build a bigger ladder, or they try to, come around. And so that's what's happening is new tools using old methods. Or I'll brute force the MFA if it's poorly implemented, and I'll keep using, 9,999 attempts until I break your MFA. Or I'll go social engineering, and I'll somehow convince you by ringing you up and, charming you into giving me your MFA. Stuff like that. So what's new is the sort of the tools that maybe the attackers are using, but it's still the old methods. There are cool tools, also bad ones, that can get you into RDP, get you into VPNs, but the methods are the same. They're brute forcing their way in, credential reuse, or the classic, the software's out of date, let's just pop the box and get in. So all the old stuff is kind of swinging around in that cycle. So these are the current ones that are popular, the Lapsus group. And again, draw parallels, right? So apparently, according to BBC, one of these individuals as part of this Lapsus extortion group was a teenager of 17 years old with 300 bitcoins and was doing different hacking activities around SIM swapping and a lot of brute forcing and a lot of just trying to break in through the front door. Now, people remember the TalkTalk hack many years ago? There's also this chap's Lulsec, right? Lulsec had a load of bitcoins. They did some simple SQL injection and some brute forcing. TalkTalk, I think it again was a 17-year-old person who just found some really low-hanging fruit. And again, what we're seeing is there are these crazy complex, hacks. The way Jeff Bezos got hacked when his affair was released. These kind of really, really targeted, or when the FBI wants to break into an iPhone, they exist, right? But they're expensive. When it comes to people that kind of the normal people who don't have billion-dollar budgets, they revert to more simple attacks. So there's a bit of a history cycle here that, these three groups, if you want to call them that, kind of had the same, operandi. They looked for opportunistic targets and they broke into them by using kind of standard techniques, things that anyone with, about a bit of time and a bit of knowledge could put together. So story number one, and this is where we sometimes get a lot of our information from, incident response. So we get called in because the bad guys have broke into a company broke into a system, done bad things. So this is story number one. First thing, again, if you want to work in cybersecurity, particularly if you want to work in an area where you may get called up, just be careful about your holidays. Easter, Christmas, any religious holidays, Thanksgiving, that's when they tend to strike. The Friday before the weekend. We've had Easter weekend, we've had Christmas, Thanksgiving. Again, we're not an American company, probably tell by my accent, but that's when it happens. That's their target for that reason, because when they launch, it's harder to mount a response because everybody's at home, drunk, eating food, having fun. So we got a call just on Thanksgiving weekend, and this was a company that had an IT department, fully functioning, had backup, Cyber Essentials Plus, penetration tests were carried out, anti-spam, phishing, and anti-malware as well. So they had like all the standard tools that you would have in an organization, but the Hive ransomware was found on multiple devices. So it's like, uh-oh, you know, what's going to go on? And interestingly, in this situation, the first question you get is, again, we got brought in, we weren't their provider of security, from their managing director, right, Neil, we've got this. I've spent £50,000 on cyber security. How have I been hacked? That's what they're asking, because they've been spending all this money already and they've still been hacked, yeah? And this is the point, is that, you know, there's a slide a bit later I'll come on to actually, we'll skip to that part. But we looked into this and we found out that one of the administrator accounts had been compromised. A standard tool, you know, you want to get the skeleton key, you want to get the key to all the rooms, and this had been compromised, and they'd logged in via RDP from a non-UK geographical IP as well. Okay, you know, standard, you know, way to get in, get an account, log in through RDP from a non-geographical or UK account. So IP, I mean, again, the geo IP is an interesting one. You can lock your IP addresses, but it's not hard for someone to change their IP, you know, to bounce off another VPN or Tor node or something. But what I found interesting here was, or we did as a company, lack of MFA on an admin account. Now, does anyone know anything about Cyber Essentials Plus? Yeah? Does anyone know what one of the past criteria is for Cyber Essentials Plus, which relates to multi-factor authentication?
Like all of the admin accounts should have multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, you can't pass it unless you tick and this is where it falls down, unless you tick a box that says, all my accounts that are administrator have MFA. So Cyber Essentials Plus and Cyber Essentials Basic has a place, but this is where normally the details. All the things that they have is one thing. How they use them is a whole different ballgame. And what we see is when we deal with incidents, it's how they implement them, the staff that they have and the resources they put into the people that makes the difference. So yeah, someone's in trouble because they passed Cyber Essentials, but they shouldn't have done. Either someone in the organization lied, or the Cyber Essentials assessor passed them when they shouldn't. And that's not great. Anyone want to take a guess at what might have been the initial compromise vector in this attack?
Could it have been a reused password?
Could be. They got onto the domain controller. They did. Even before that, what's a typical way to the initial breach based on the last slide? Phishing. Yeah, it was phishing. But they've got anti-spam and phishing. How did this happen? They had Cyber Essentials, penetration testing. They had all these things. And again, it turned out the phishing, the users could actually release their own phishing emails. So that wasn't great. And the point there is they had the tool was poorly implemented. And this is where the problem occurs of you've got the things, but how are they implemented? So the attackers got in through a phishing attack. They used the phishing attack to obtain an admin account, and then they could just log in because there was no restrictions on the account. Got in there, dropped loads of ransomware, caused that company nearly to go under. Like it was at a point they were on a knife edge because they were considering paying the ransomware. And these ransomwares are not, you know, when they are organizations, they're not small. I think this was £250,000. And this is genuinely what the company had to do. They said the ransomware is $250,000. The amount of cost it will take to get everything up and running is 120,000. So they were making an actual versus, we'll just dissolve the company. It's like these kind of decisions were being made. And he's going, but I've spent however much on all this cybersecurity already. So it's kind of this is the situation that we see a lot. Back to the what's new. So these are some interesting sort of things I've seen. So I mentioned SIM swapping. SIM swapping's been around for a long time. However, MFA now makes it very interesting because SIM swapping might have been, it's always been possible, but now there's a motive to do SIM swapping, yeah? So it's not new, but it is new because people are using it. And then what we're seeing, out there, well, this one's interesting, kind of vendor shaming. So I pick on Darktrace twice today, but Darktrace is a really good product, and it's only because of their amazing marketing sort of capabilities, I think, that they're getting more marketing for free. But basically disclosing the vendors that they use for cybersecurity as part of their attacks. You've also got this one over here, which this relates to the Lapsus group, where we've always spoken in the groups I've rolled in, malicious insider, people inside an organization being all devious and stuff, right? And again, times change. Malicious insiders always potentially existed, but these groups now, or this group, are actively trying to recruit people, pay them money to compromise the company's systems. I'll give you 50 grand for some VPN, maybe not that much, but I'll give you a serious amount of money for some VPN credentials. Just give me them, walk away, don't worry about it. All it takes is one. I mean, let's do some maths here, right? If you think of the Sheffield Hallam, 5,000 staff, right? 5,000 staff, I don't know how many have access to the VPN, but if you've only got to find one person who's a little bit dubious, a little bit morally grey, wants £50,000, that's where there's another attack vector here. So people actively trying to find, ways into organisations, and over here, obviously, this is back to the Lapsus data extortion group, which again is an interesting twist because they're not ransomware, they're extortion. Now, I think it's the next slide. Ransomware is a form of extortion, but you can do extortion without ransomware, right? So this is another change. So when you ransomware someone's system, not that I've ever done it, but you're taking everything out and you're hoping that they will pay because they're desperate. In this situation, these guys break into an organization, and there's quite a few serious ones that they've got into, and they steal stuff. They steal data, they steal source code, user details, passwords, whatever they can. And then they're looking to say, well, if you would like us to not release it on the internet, if you would like us to, basically give it back to you, without doing anything bad with it, you should pay us some money. So they're allowing the company to continue, because a risk with ransomware is that the company can't continue to function. And they actually, for a ransomware group, if the company decides to fold and not pay you, that's a waste of time from a purely, because a lot of these, they work like businesses, right? They're there to make money. They'll have spent time and effort to get into that organization, to ransomware them. And if they can't actually make money out of it, their CEO or whoever's in charge of them won't be very happy. And money, unfortunately, drives a lot of what happens in the world, and ransomware and other groups aren't the same. So we're seeing this like extortion model coming out with Lapsus. Supply chain attacks or vendor attacks, they've been around for a while, but again, one that caught my eye this year, I know a few people this has happened to, is, NAS boxes, network attack storage, right? So you go out and you buy yourself a nice NAS box, 8 terabytes, all your pirated movies or whatever you've got, put them on there. They'll probably be pirated, you wouldn't download a car, don't do it, it's not great. But if you buy one of those boxes, you buy it from a trusted vendor, you set it up and you put all your family photos on there, you put everything that you keep dearly, it's safe, it's physically in your house, it's sat there, and then one morning you walk in and you can't get onto it. And you try to log on and it's a ransomware node. Not for your laptop, not for your desktop, but for all your photos that you've backed up. And you sat there going, well, the laptop's not ransomware, the desktop's not ransomware, nothing on my network. Well, how is that ransomware? Anyone Anyone know what a lot of these NAS boxes now do? Well, or have been doing to make life convenient? Connects to the network, and even more so, connects to the internet. Because when you're on a bus going, from into Sheffield, you might just want to log onto your NAS box, right? And don't get me wrong, I know that it's a feature for a reason, but what we've seen is these groups attacking the actual or finding vulnerabilities in the code of these, either. I've seen one example where they broke into the company itself and pushed out ransomware as part of an update. That's a bit crazy. And another instance, this is more the norm, where they find a vulnerability in the NAS box that has an open port on the internet, and they just jump in and automatically, not even manually, and ransomware. And I've seen one vendor, one NAS box vendor, actually paid the ransomware company to be able to give the key to all its customers. Because people were saying, why is this on the internet by default? Like, don't get me wrong, if you connect it and you configure it to connect to the internet, that's on you. But out of the box, it was coming with this feature. So, new techniques and targets, but different ways. What we got? Yeah, so, what would you do? What do companies do to improve their cybersecurity? So you start with that, just set up the client and say that you can do everything right and you can still get hacked, which is a great way to settle them down. But really, the biggest difference I see with companies that seem to do better and not, and I have this quote because you can do everything right and you could just be unlucky. You could do everything you should do, and because you're against an adversity, you're not. This isn't static; it's always moving. But the extreme example I always use, which we saw at a company that got hacked, is they spent £100,000 on Darktrace, and Darktrace is a very good tool. They spent a load of money, got it installed, happy days, but they spent absolutely zero money on anybody to actually use it, configure it, monitor it, watch it. So they took 100 grand, spent it there, and they were happy for a little while until they were hacked, they were ransomware, and upon looking into Darktrace's logs and information, Darktrace had detected many malicious attacks. The attackers jumping around the network, doing all these bad things. They had over 22,000 alerts on this box, but no one looked at it. I mean, not all 22,000 were, to be fair, part of the problem was it was alert fatigue as well, right? Because some of those alerts were just basic informationals, but there were some criticals, there were some highs, and no one was looking at them. So they've been in there for like at least 3 months. Does anyone have an idea why we can only say that they've been in for 3 months?
90-day retention period.
Yes, 90-day retention periods. So we could say, yeah, we can see them all the way back to 90. Oh, there's nothing else. So again, with these tools, 90 days it's not a short amount, it's not a long amount of time. And if the cutoff is there, or the logs start to overwrite themselves, that can be a big problem. So you can go, yeah, you've been hacked. They've been in there at least 9 months, a minimum of 9 months, and a maximum of forever. So the point of this slide is, what do companies tend to do better? I won't say do a good job. They spend a bit more money on their staff, and they appreciate that maybe spending less money on the tool and more money on the people might. It depends on the person or people involved. There's that whole element of who do you hire and how good are they and can they do the job. But actually spending money on actual people to do the thing is also a very wise move. And we see more companies that do better in cybersecurity who invest in staff to use these tools rather than just relying on the tool. But you don't have to spend loads of money. So I've got basic, in brackets, cheap bit defender. All that is all anti-malware, or XDR, MDR, every DR there is, provider has a basic option, right? And normally the basic option has a very good anti-malware engine. It does these things. The more advanced ones just come with better features of additional reports and things. But we had this company who had the basic level of Bitdefender, but they called us because there was ransomware found on a random server. So we looked at it, and actually, and this is, we think the attackers accidentally launched the ransomware early because they'd not actually fully compromised the network. They were in the middle of doing it. And then the ransomware had been dropped on a server that wasn't that valuable. It was a bit we were like, why have they ransomware this server? This doesn't make sense. They appeared to be a lower skill level though, because, and we say that because they kind of had tried, they were on a Windows box and they were trying Linux tools and Macs, and this is the truth, right? Just in any industry, even in the dark side, there are people who are more skilled and less skilled. And so we think that these might have been less skilled. We looked into it, we found 3 compromised hosts, all of which had been detected and nuked by the Bitdefender. I haven't finished the slide there. Unfortunately, nobody had looked at it. That's what I should say. But what had happened here is, the Bitdefender had actually found them dropping malware, found them doing bad things, and had tried to stop them. It was only because they had so much time to keep trying that they finally managed to probably get the admin account and drop the ransomware, and even if they did it by accident. In this case, if I remember, they got in, this was credential reuse. There was a port open and they jumped in over the internet using some previously compromised username and password. But the point here is that actually, basic, so expensive, but this tool, it found them, it stopped them, it alerted, but nobody was looking. So again, another example of tools that are available, but you've got to have the money there to piece of people. This one was more, I didn't say interesting. So for me personally, it was. But we were involved in again another ransomware incident with one of our IT partners. They did have several systems ransomware, and we can't say credit for this, but one of the actual IT technicians who was going around to rebuild the machines logged onto a machine and was like, oh, this machine is not ransomware. That's interesting. Opened up the browser and he was like, oh, the hackers are on here. They were on there. They were actually actively hacking and doing what they needed to do. And we found the way that they were extracting information. And again, this is where a lot of fancy tools out there might fall by the wayside. Does anyone know any ways that people might take data off of computers and systems? Even simple ways or complicated ways. How might you, if you wanted to take information off this computer, take it away? Not if you, but you're not physically there, right? Over the internet, what could you use? FTP. Was that sorry? FTP. FTP, yeah, you use FTP. Again, the good thing about FTP is there's loads of rules in the firewall that can look at that and block you and go, don't allow FTP out. So it's a great way of going, yeah, we'll block that. We won't let them use FTP. We'll stop them there. But it's a common way. Sometimes DNS, let's be really sneaky. Let's try different things. These guys had logged into Google Drive and they were just uploading it into Google Drive. And the worst thing, or best thing, however you look at it, we looked at it. There was all these folders, 5 other companies that have been hacked, alphabeticalized order, all the files being uploaded nicely in uniform. And it was just like all these tools and techniques. And you go, let's use Google Drive because it's on the internet and it's in the browser. In this installation, we got the NCA involved. They came to the computers, did what they did, never heard anything else about it. But the point is, I guess here is, so very sneaky, different ways of doing stuff, and people can think outside the box, and sometimes it's not the way that you think it would be. For that, what never changes or disappears. So what seems to have stayed static or just keeps on repeating itself. So yeah, technology and progress continues to happen, which means that software updates are perpetually a problem. Like keeping software updated. Yeah, Microsoft has got better, but for all the things that Microsoft now does that's good, there are 5 other startups and small software companies that come in and don't do the things as well, or companies that grow really, really fast, and they grow so fast and so sort of furious that they actually can't keep up with their own cybersecurity, requirements and stuff. So that can cause big problems. Budget constraints, it's always a problem, right? I go back to this slide here. I did see another picture here. Is security budget before a data breach, and the security budget after a data breach, and then there's another one that's even bigger, which is the cost of the breach as well, what it cost. But the point is, a lot of the time, people don't spend money until something happens. People tend to buy insurances, for health, car, house after the event. It's not before, it's after. Because, why would, because we're really bad at apportioning risk, to be honest, which is a whole other talk. But yeah, the budget constraints affect it because you've got to work within those. Knowledge transfer, as humans, we get older. It's really, really horrible, isn't it? We get older. And new people come in and they're really excitable and really, really eager, but they know nothing. And there's this constant cycle of, you take a developer, right? A developer who's been around for a long time, 20 years, battle scarred, has done everything, knows everything inside out, costs a load of money, really expensive, but they know a lot of stuff. You get new developers coming in, really potential, good talent, maybe don't know everything, haven't been through those sort of wars and stuff. And you've got these new people always coming through. And don't get me wrong, people who have been in something a while make mistakes, but the less experience you are, the more likely you are to make a mistake. If I got put in an F1 car, I guarantee I'll be crashing on the first corner. Like Lewis Hamilton, probably going to do a bit better than me because he's got a bit more experience. And it's like that, the knowledge transfer and bringing people through and making sure, we do that. And sometimes experienced people can be a little bit arrogant. They can be a little bit elitist, a little bit, they call them gatekeepers. I know everything. I'm not going to tell you anything. And equally, I'm going to make you feel very small and intimidated because it helps my ego. And this needs to be better. We need to, and knowledge transfer goes both ways. Because when I was teaching the uni, like the students would come in with some really cool ideas and things that they'd seen and go, have you seen this? And so we need to get better at that because we're not as good as we should be. Priorities, and I say that in a business context. I had one guy who owned a company say, yeah, we spent the last 5 years growing the business. We're now ready to look at cybersecurity. It's like for 5 years, he didn't care. And I kind of get it, right? Because what's the point in doing all this cool cybersecurity if you've got no business to pay for it? So it's getting those balances right. And we need to understand that, I guess, that a lot of the businesses they're there to run the business first, and security is unfortunately a second second thought in some cases. Sometimes delays to reporting, and this can be on several areas, but what I find here is when we do incident response and we need to get access to logs and information, it's not available. Like no one knows where they are and you can't get the information, or there's been a phishing attack and nobody knows how to log in to the actual email system to look at everybody's emails or to actually find out what's going on there. And I kind of mentioned this already, a viable product or service trumps security. So like what the goal of that company isn't probably cybersecurity, it's to make widgets or it's to provide something. And so security isn't going to be their priority. If they can't pay their staff, then they're not going to worry about cybersecurity, unfortunately. So it's the pressures which are there. Ransomware as a service, it's been around for a while. It's not going anywhere. It just shocks me. I mean, these things that you can buy, they have ticketing systems, help desks. It's crazy. Like I saw some screenshots where, someone paid the ransomware and they was, they'd got 98 of their 100 PCs, unransomwared, and there was 2 left, and they submit a ticket for the bad guys to log on and help them in some way. I don't know. Like it boggles my mind, but this is how commercialized, commoditized it's become. You get dashboards. How many companies have paid you? How many have encrypted at the moment? Who should you be putting a bit of pressure on? Who should you be phoning up to say, are you sure you don't want to pay the, I'll tell you what, I'll do you a deal. I'll cut the ransomware price in half, 24-hour deal. Stuff like that. It's crazy, to be honest. Offers as well. You can make them an offer. Well, if you pay it, like a parking ticket, you get that, don't you? Pay your parking ticket within 30 days and it's 60 quid. After 30 days, it's, I don't know, £400 or something. So this kind of stuff, it scares me, but it's also very kind of interesting as well. And this is what happens. What's changing? So stronger regulations. GDPR strengthened things, and there are other regulations that are coming in, and they do make things better, and it does feed through to the front lines. It does. The FCA are now, the Financial Conduct Authority are now regulating companies in kind of the funeral sector, and also to an element of life insurance and stuff, which was already there. But that kind of stuff, you know, the regulator comes in and says, you need to meet this certain standard, and it forces a change, or it forces them to take note. So overall, regulations get stronger. Occasionally, governments like to roll them back a little bit. The trend tends to go in one way, kind of does this, it goes back up and a blip as well. Government involvement. Now, this can be a bad thing when we're talking about cyber weapons, but actually, you know, back in, I want to say 2012, might be a bit wrong there, the UK government came up with a cybersecurity strategy. You know, 10 years later, we've got the NCSC, we've got loads of things going on. And that kind of spawned from them creating that as a strategy back in 2012. And as other governments do those kind of things, it does impact the country and the people. Security is part of the process, everyone's favorite term, DevSecOps. But it's, you know, again, DevSecOps has been thrown around for a long time. It has a place that it can improve things. But I think it's one of those that I think it gets a lot of lip service, and some big software companies do it well. But really, for me, it's integrating security. So security isn't the afterthought. It isn't. We've done all our programming, we've built all our software, and then the security comes afterwards. You know, fix it at the end. And security integration, and you know, the GDPR phrase, security by design. So, you know, when you're going to buy a product, you know, a product for ticketing, if you're an IT company, that product has had security thought about within it. We were doing an assessment recently, and a credit card system. The credit card system didn't have MFA for administrators. It was, if I'm correct, it was an American system, therefore they didn't think it was appropriate, and they kind of said, well, in America we're all right, so tough. You know, and it's vetting the vendors and the products and services. Some take it seriously, some don't. And finding companies that have that in there, but it can be very difficult when you've got a system or software that's integrated into your company. To unravel that is really difficult. It's easy to say, just get rid of them. Yeah, it might be a 2-year process. And this was a line from our data protection officer that I stole. He just wanted me to throw a bit of a thing in there, that he thinks that the UK's new data protection direction is kind of making data protection a little bit weaker. So that's what I meant about sometimes it can go the other way as well. Snake oil. So, you know, what products and services aren't as good as they purport to be. Now, some of these are not bad, but I think the marketing is better than they make you believe it. Dark web monitoring. So you guys familiar with dark web monitoring, yeah? Yeah, so, you know, the deep dark web that you can only get to through Tor or through some kind of crazy mechanism, you know, on that there's information. Yeah, there's loads of crazy stuff on it. From dark, you know, web marketplaces to, you know, places where, yeah, people do sell credit card details and access and stuff. Now, the reason I have an issue with the dark web monitoring is if I stole a load of data from a company and I wanted to go and sell it on the dark web, I'm not just going to go and post it on the dark web. I'm going to go and sell it. I might have a forum that I'm part of that I have to log into, and I go into that forum and I find people and I sell it to. A lot of the companies that do dark web monitoring just scour what's kind of like available, the open dark web, if such a thing exists. You know, they don't get into that forum where I've posted a sample of the data. So a lot of the time, the dark web monitoring, it sounds better than it is. Now, don't get me wrong, if I did post some of the details online, then it will catch it. But I think the point is that the dark web monitoring has its limitations. It's got its blind spots. It's not, it's, you know, we've had a play with some of these tools. I've thrown my details in, Thomas has thrown his in, and we weren't impressed. Like, you know, you search for things and see what you can find on people. And there's a couple of websites, Dehashed and what's the other one? Okay. And GoStefan. There's a couple that the ones that show you the password leaks, they're actually really good, and they cost about $5. Whereas the dark web monitoring costs like thousands and thousands a month. So I'm not saying it can't be useful, but I just think some of them are a bit more, the marketing's great. The same for the, threat intelligence feeds. There's some really good free threat intelligence feeds out there. SANS have one, the NCSC have one, and there are some great paid ones. But I've seen threat intelligence feeds, which are basically the free ones repackaged. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're happy to pay for it, that's okay, right? You can pay for someone to make it nice for you. But I just think some of these services are a little bit, I don't know, not good value for money. Any product that is bought and not properly implemented, if you don't actually spend the time to invest in getting something working, it's probably not going to be that good. Any tech which requires no human involvement, right? I don't think we're there yet. Yeah, the autonomous cars are not there. They don't. You don't want to trust them to get you there safely. They can't do it. So if the cars can't do it, then I don't believe that the cybersecurity products can do it with no human involvement. Like we need, actually we're quite smart. Yeah, we're not at this point yet. They haven't started. We'll get there one day. But when people are sort of AI and machine learning. Everything's got AI and machine learning. And there are products that do use AI and machine learning. But again, it's a marketing thing. I think you've got to ask the questions, how is it different to X? So we've got a new antivirus, program that uses machine learning. Okay, how is it different to the sort of classic ones? Is it just the classic one with a little bit of a twist on it? Oh, it's got a polymorphic engine. Okay, but explain to me what it is, because you might end up spending thousands and thousands more for something that's just, not quite there. And that links back to the human involvement. I think the more that you have to have people involved somewhere, even if it's a tool that like automates, responses. Someone's got to look at it as well. So yeah, be careful there. And yeah, did we make it? Oh, 2 minutes over. Yeah. Hey, questions online or face to face?
Thank you so much. Okay, one question. Why is business email compromise less site than ransomware, in your opinion?
Okay, so I would say because firstly, the ransomware operators, they tend to kind of boast about what they did, and it's more impactful. So if a whole company is ransomware, even though companies would like their staff to stay quiet, it's very obvious when ransomware hits. If you ever see a company that goes down for a few days and they say it's IT issues, there's a high probability it's not just IT issues, it's something else, right? And that's it. Whereas if it's a business email compromise, it's normally more subtle. Like if, a C-level, a high profile person in a company's had their email hacked, like, don't get me wrong, it's still, it could be even worse actually in some cases, but it's just a lot less kind of evident. Hopefully that answers Jack. Does answer Aaron. Thanks for that. Sorry, it's moving. Okay, so yeah, there's lots of different routes in. So the question is, if you guys can see, you can see. So yeah, their journey. I'd say, what area do you want to go into? And don't pigeonhole yourself, because you can always change. You can move around. Like if the most easy route to tell you about is sort of some of the technical routes, which is going into being the pen tester, because you can do all the hacking online and stuff. But then if you want to do risk and stuff like that, normally you need, I see two routes. People who go do a degree in a course and then try and get a job in that area. So we've hired people who have retrained into doing like a compliance course, and then they've come and done compliance for us. Or I've seen people who've like gone and worked for a company like in their quality department, and then get exposed to the cybersecurity in that way. So kind of moving across rather than coming straight in. But I guess it depends. It depends what you want to do in your where do you want to go? I guess Yes.
You said about the NCA getting involved. So you're doing incident response. You're involved in ongoing criminal activity. But if you just email the helpline for the police or whatever, nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a commercial company, where do you stop doing what you're doing and involve the police? So where do you give over that responsibility for stuff that we could do to this government organisation? You know, there must have been a well thought out boundary that you don't cross.
So from our point of view, the moment we saw that, and we actually saw that there were American companies in there, and thought, like, we don't want to put ourselves at risk. You know, this could, like, if we start touching.
Why would it?
Well, if, you know, for us to start to do something, you know, we're like, because we could see 5 other companies' data being stolen. So we are, do we delete it? You know, do we delete that data? So it says, well, no, they've been ransomware, they want that data. Like, there's all these questions that we didn't feel qualified and politically immutable. Yeah, we felt very uncomfortable. We were lucky because we have NCSC status. So we've got with one of the badges we've got a way to talk to them. And that's what we did, is we said, look, we contacted them the way we do and said, look, this has happened. And then they were like, they deem if they want to get involved. So, you know, if you just called the police up about a cybercrime, again, to a point, unfortunately, it's down to their, do they deem it, you know, is it worth not worth their time, but is it worth their resources? Because their resources are limited. So this was the same. We could have contacted them and they could have said, no, we're not interested. You know, fortunately, they were. But we had a big discussion around what we should do. And we decided that, you know, we wanted to pass it to somebody with the authority to deal with it.
So you're saying there's no criminality process that we follow at this stage? It's all kind of what you think might be the best idea.
We're employed by the client to protect the client's data and get them back up and running. We decided that it was good to involve the NCSC because of the greater good and the other companies we could see. Like, we were trying to do the right thing, but ultimately, when we go into an incident, like in most things, isn't it? You know, we're there to try and help them protect their business and survive, really. So yeah, tricky one. Yeah, so incidents are stressful.
And about this bug catching, what do you think about bug catching?
If you mean bug catching, like, so this, I mean, you could talk about bug hunting, like HackerOne and stuff. So if the question is about sort of bug hunting like HackerOne, I would say the difference is when you do a bug bounty, you're sort of saying, you're allowing people to go and hack and try different things. They might test all the different parts of your application, but they might not. Whereas when you get like a penetration test, you're getting a full cover of everything. But the bug hunting, bug bounties, if that's the question, is very nice to complement that. I think they go well together nicely. But you can't rely, I've seen a couple of companies rely on the bug bounty programs as their annual pen test. You can't say that you've had a full test because you don't know what everybody's trying. You know, you could put a bug bounty online and nobody could touch your hat. You don't know if anyone's doing anything. So if that was your question, I hope that answers it. Training resources. Okay, so resources. So you've mentioned information governance. IT governance are a really good website. They've got loads of different resources online. Same with the NCSC. They've actually got really good things. It's really hard to know where to look here. Kind of want to look at the camera, look there, look there.
Yeah,
But yeah, the NCSC is another really good place. The Yorkshire CYBERSECURITY cluster, again, loads of kind of great sort of talks and people there to meet, and I find a lot of the stuff is just in my head. There's some stuff, but actually, when you spread it around the room, it's been able to tap into those different people. But for information governance, you know, IT governance, the website, as a competitor of ours, but you know what, they're really good, so I can't complain. I can't complain.
Okay, sorry, is there any particular reason why pen testers don't like to write reports? because I know I wrote my first pen test report last semester.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a vulnerability assessment right now. I think it's really enjoyable. I don't know why.
So not everybody, that's what I'm saying. So, I think part of the challenge is that it comes when someone's going to look at that report, right? So this is how I used to do when I used to write the reports. Like, I'm writing the report, I'm writing the finding, and I know that somebody else is going to read that. The developer, the sysadmin, the CISO, and that it's a bit of pressure. You know that they're going to go through that with fine code. And if you make a mistake or there's something in there that you've said and it's not quite true, that they're going to hold you to account on. So it's maybe the pressure of knowing what, and sometimes when you find issues, it can be quite difficult because it's the language switch, right? So you've also got to articulate technical concepts in more managerial ways sometimes. And again, some people, they can do it. They've got the. Some people, it doesn't come easy. So I think it's more the amount of time and effort it takes to really craft it nicely. And then you know that even though you're trying to do a good thing, you're not always, we try and have a good relationship. You're going to walk in and sort of say, you've not done what you should do here. They're going to be defensive. So then you have to try to be like, I'm here to help. But after just telling you, this is bad and that. So yeah, there's some probably emotional things there as well.
You should always buy them before you give them the-
Yeah. There's write something down. This was really good. This was bad. This was good. So yeah.
This is sort of a question for you as an employer. What is it that you find, especially people that are coming straight out of academia, sort of lack when they apply to sort of first get into the industry?
So this is a harsh answer, but because I wouldn't expect them to have it, they develop it. The awareness of why it is they're doing the job sometimes. Like, I'm here because I like to do this thing and I'm doing it. And you're like, oh no, you're here because they're paying us to do this thing. like it's that mental shift sometimes that is kind of, oh right, I wanted to come here and just do cool stuff. You can do cool stuff, but you have to do cool stuff, to a point in that. So there's that one. And also the appreciation of the basics, because like Nmap, right, as a technical tool, right? We used it 10 years ago, it's around 20 years ago, we still use it now on red teaming engagements, purple teaming, penetration testing. And that tool is being constantly used. And I've had loads of people who can't tell me how it works. Like, how does it work? What's a port? How does a port work? I didn't want to learn about a port. I wanted to use this new sort of command and control software over here that's all singing and all dancing, and this other tool that I just downloaded from GitHub, and it's amazing. And don't get me wrong, there's cool stuff, but actually not appreciating that a lot of the other things are built on the back of the basic ones. So, web testing, like actually knowing how HTTP works, and not even know if I know how to use Burp as a tool, but I actually don't know how HTTP works. Is again sometimes a bit of a as well.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So in regards to what Jake started, so if you start again here as a student, how would you gain work experience while you are studying? So, as an employer, you're going to be interviewing people, and particularly you are interested in people who have got experience. So as a student, how could they increase or they have some work experience?
So again, depends on the area. If let's go a different route, like IT governance, GRC. Like somebody who wants to. I mean, you would cover that on your course as well, but the course could help. It's like like 27,001 GRC. Like actually do like role plays in the class. Like writing a policy is great, but actually like trying to explain that policy to somebody, or when the engagement with people, because if we go to something technical, it's more easy for me to go, oh, use try hack me, use hack the box, go do this. Whereas when it comes to the other areas like incident response, compliance, they're a bit more difficult to work on outside because they normally involve people more than the others. And so that's it. I'll be honest, the other thing that we've had, when people want to go on the blue side in GRC, their written ability, their ability to convey, because when you're writing policies, right, you've got to be succinct, you've got to be quite eloquent in your language as well. So that's really important to get the message across in the policies. Whereas, you know, something like incident response, we had a chap who used to work in events, and like one of his skill sets that he came to us with was like staying cool under pressure. Like that was a good skill to have, because, you know, when, you know, you're working in a high pressure situation, being able to thingy. So the softer skills can sometimes be quite powerful in compared to some of the pure knowledge, because they are, which is why, again, I know a lot of students dislike this, right? Like, you know, when you have to work in groups and you have to work on a project together and there's a deliverable, and I know the frustrations because you might have people in your group that don't pull their weight and there's no one to tell them off and say, if you don't do your job, you're going to get fired. But it's sometimes those softer skills that can be, when we've interviewed, like actually some people come in with like similar technical skills, and it's the softer skills that will edge them to being able to, yeah.
So as an employer, when you're interviewing candidates, you thinking you want to make sure that they know the basics, basically.
Yeah.
And they are first, you know, for knowledge. Am I right?
Oh yeah, that, because again, I think you're spot on, because it's like you might learn to do, I think of a good example. So today we were on a call and we started talking about policies to do with, you know, like use at work, you know, the usage of the internet at work, right, and what the policy should say. And then the client jumps from that one straight over to BYOD as well. You know, oh, BYOD policies, how do we do that? What do we do if people have their phones and we want them to have email on their phones? Can we put mobile device management on their phones? How do we do that? And it's kind of that, like, you know, if you didn't know that, being able to go, you know, the classic, I'm not sure, need to, you know, that we're talking about this, I'm going to go away, and then having the time to go and learn about the BYOD policies, because then the next time the questions are out, well, the firewall, you know, the change management process for the firewall, it's always like variations of different things. So yeah, being able to adapt, because I'm still writing policies, still writing them for people generally, but different situations are what happens. Or, you know, doing a pen test and I'm testing this thing on AWS, and then 2 months later, Amazon creates a brand new thing. And they're like, great, you can test AWS, now test this thing. And you go, okay. And you got to go, oh, where's the documentation? Read the documentation. What even is it? Wikipedia. Oh, it's a thing. Like, you are literally starting from, like, you're starting from scratch with some things, but you're applying your skills to it, is what I'm trying to say there. So that's what I say, that it's always changing, but the methods don't change. But the specific kind of, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's the best thing.
Regarding cybersecurity, I mean, not resolving, but some consideration from what you were mentioning. So if there is a company, if this company is a small company just starting, so wouldn't it be easier for them to go through the Cyber Essential and ISO 27001 while they're small, and then grow while they are, you know, they are compliant? Wouldn't be wise, or
it would be
less
wise.
costly?
It would be wise. The biggest problem that happens is, if you like, you got your compliance kind of line, yeah. So you're a small company, you get compliant. 12 months away, that's when you certify, yeah. So you start here and go like this. Oh no, we need to recertify. And then you do that, and the company does that. It's like an ebb and a flow. So not all companies do that, but normally, if it's a 12-month thing, there's this lull where it goes down and then they come back up. So as they grow, what will happen is the new things sometimes come on board and they're not, you know, But then there's this point where because thing is like change management, right? Lots of small companies don't have change management because it's costly, it's an overhead, it's time consuming. There's this kind of point where they need it though. And I see this with a lot of medium companies. They don't have change management. So the firewall sometimes is like Swiss cheese, right? Because over the 12 months, they've opened ports and changed things and forgot to close them. And then they get to this point and they kind of go, oh yeah, we really should have change management. But they have to then, you got to pay for it. So it's really easy to go, you should do it, but can you do it? And that's what that's where the barrier, the challenge is. There's when you bring new things on, like having the checklists, and normally there's no one to manage that in a small company.
Operations get in the way.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it shouldn't be. But
Do you think cybersecurity insurance is the solution?
I think it helps. So the one I mentioned,
Yeah.
the company who got hacked and then was like, oh, I'm going to have to spend this much money on fixing everything. I mean, they won't pay out if you pay the ransomware, but if you are spending money on rebuilding, the insurance will give you some of that, hopefully give you some of that money back. In most cases, we've seen they're getting more tighter and putting more caveats in, but the insurers are, like most times with an incident, the insurer is paying for some. So on the whole, I've seen more positive than negative for having insurance. But they're starting to bring in more like rules, like you need to have this, which makes sense, right? Because I had a friend who worked in cybersecurity insurance, and in 2015, he's like, oh, you can just sell it. It's great. Just make money selling it. Everyone, no one ever claims. And then, WannaCry came. And then after that, the ransomware came. And they was like, oh, we shouldn't have sold all these policies. They're actually costing us a fortune.